Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Coffee with the ED. I am Maureen Arwood, the Executive Director of Town Green, and today we're joined by John Sigliano, who is going to talk about our participatory science project that's at Wingersheek Beach. We're happy to be joined by other members of the advisory board. And John, could you give everyone an outline or an overview of your work and your background, and then you can just jump right in.
Sure. I'm a marine conservation ecologist. I've recently retired from academia and moved back to Massachusetts, and I live in Rockport. And when I've always been interested in getting involved with local nonprofits, local NGOs to do kind of on the ground conservation. So this has given me the opportunity to do that because I think grassroots or ground, from the ground conservation is very effective. And so my background, I've done a lot of different stuff, but my two more recent projects that still are ongoing is studying the effects of coastal and ocean acidification on rocky intertidal organisms and communities. I also have a project in on microplastics that'll be starting on Cape Ann this summer. And also behind me, you can see this beautiful penguin. I'll be expanding my microplastics work to the Arctic and the Antarctic in 2028. So I'm excited about that. And I also do a lot of work on environmental monitoring, or I should say ecological monitoring. And I work extensively with citizen scientists or participatory scientists, and I've been working with volunteers for 27 years now. So this project aligns very closely with my interests. So I guess I'll just start with my slides. Just got a few slides. I want to give a background first on the project, and then I'll talk about what our next steps will be. Okay. All right, so actually, it's started at the end, so let me get to the beginning. So, all right. So, as Maureen said, this is the Participatory Marsh Monitoring Project. You may have heard of citizen science. That's a term that is used in the United States. It has a different meaning in Europe and other parts of the world. So now we're starting to really refer to it more as participatory science than citizen science. So just want to make sure that was clear. Either way, it's just words. It just means working with volunteers to produce in real scientific research and monitoring. So the purpose of this project is to establish a baseline. So a lot of these marshes around Cape Ann and really the world uh, have not been studied or haven't been studied for decades. And things are changing quickly due to climate change and other anthropogenic threats. So we need to set a baseline. In order to understand what's going on, we need to have a starting point. And so the first goal is, as you see, is to set a baseline. So we know the current status of the salt marsh. Hopefully, over time, we'll see the salt marsh improve. but it's equally important, maybe even more so than to see if it's declining, so that we can determine ways to mitigate that. So that's the second bullet point. We're going to do a long-term monitoring. Most of the ecological changes that are occurring now will take a few years to determine statistically. We need to be able to basically distinguish between the noise, just normal natural variation. Temperature will vary from year to year, from month to month. Um, you know, uh, Salinity will change, etc. So we need to determine um, the signal from the noise. The signal will be changes that are due to human causes. So that may take a long time. For example, I've been monitoring Rocky Intertidal Zone and part of the Acadia National Park, and it took me about 10 years to determine statistically that there is a change in the intertidal. So
John,
yes,
could I interrupt you for a second?
sure.
I think we're seeing the what's next page.
Oh,
I
really?
wasn't sure if you could maybe come out and go back into
Yeah,
the front, the purpose of the project and maybe share it again.
sure.
Sorry to interrupt your
No, no,
flow.
I'm glad you did, because I was seeing the first slide on my computer. Um, what do you see now?
What is the purpose of this project? It's a little bit out of the window, but I think it will work.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Sure. All right. So anyway, and the third bullet is there because there has been some talk, discussions about restoring Wingersheik Marsh. So again, we need to know what the marsh looks like before the restoration, and then we need to monitor it after the restoration to determine whether or not the restoration works. So that's kind of the broad purpose of this project. So why should we do this project? Well, there's a lot of reasons. Uh, Salt marshes provide habitat for adults and nursery habitats for juveniles for many species. It supports a great amount of biodiversity. They buffer the coast against storm surge, so it protects the coasts. This is important because of sea level rise. The storms are getting stronger, which means the storm surge is getting more severe. It removes pollutants such as nitrogen and phosphorus that flows into the oceans from the land. It provides cultural, aesthetic, and recreational value to many people. And the salt marshes are disappearing. And they're disappearing throughout New England and throughout the world for from many different causes. There's changes in hydrology. Hydrology is just refers to water movement, uh, and that is often from tidal restrictions that are built by people. Dredge fill, which is important for this marsh, and I'll talk about this later. Coastal squeeze. The way marshes grow is they grow up, so vertically, as sediment gets deposited every time the tides come in, and marshes grow by moving back away from the ocean or away from the tidal rivers. There's basically three zones of a salt marsh: the low, middle, and upper marsh. And what happens is if the marsh can't keep moving back away as it grows up, then the lower marsh will overtake the rest of the marsh, and then eventually that will flood. And then as sea level rises, and then you'll just have just you won't have a marsh anymore. And the reason marshes are being squeezed is because we build roads and housing developments and parking lots on the coastal terrestrial side of the marsh up against the high marsh. And as the low marsh migrates, it takes over the high marsh. There's rising ocean temperature, of course, from climate change, coastal acidification. The pH of seawater is declining, and that affects organisms that have hard shells like oysters and clams. And of course, sea level rise, which is the most significant threat due to climate change. So, where and when?
John, I think you gotta manually do the slides
Oh,
because
really?
we're still on the purpose.
Oh, sorry about this.
No problem, no
Yeah,
problem.
I don't know what's going on. All right, but do you see the where and when slide now?
Yeah, if you just use that, I think
Sure, sure.
that'll be
Okay.
fine.
All right. Well, let me see if I can make this better a little bit. All right. Um, all right. So where and when? I didn't put the when down because we're not sure yet. But it will be sometime in August. I have to check the tides. We want to work during the growing season of the marsh. So, because it's really difficult to identify plants, especially if when during the winter and the fall when they're not growing and they don't have leaves and flowers. So we do it in the growing season in summer, and it's also a much nicer time to work. So we are working right now in the Wingersheik salt marsh. We'll be revisiting the Wingersheik marsh again this year, and we will add additional sites, both within the Wingersheik Marsh and also other sites around Cape Ann. Uh, those additional sites will be added when we're able to. It takes a long time to set up a study site. It took us 2 full days last year to get a couple of sites set up. So it's a slow process, but we'll be doing this for a while and we want to do it right. So we'll eventually add additional sites around Cape Ann. So where are we working now? So this is a look at the Wingersheik Marsh. And can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Okay, so just to give you an orientation, here's the main parking lot. Here's this little dirt auxiliary parking lot. We walk through here to get, this is the entrance to the marsh, and we set up 2 sites side by side. And I'll show you exactly how we do that, what we'll actually be doing when we're there. But these are the 2 sites that we started to monitor last year. So what will you do? What will we do? So we collect data on salt marsh vegetation. There's not Salt marshes have fairly low biodiversity, which in a way makes it more tractable for research. So there's not a lot of different species that we need to learn how to identify. But marsh vegetation is the most important type of organism in a salt marsh, obviously. So we'll be monitoring the different types of salt marsh vegetation. We also will be recording benthic animals that we observe. So benthic just means animals that are crawling, that crawl on the bottom. So for example, snails, we will opportunistically record the bird species we see. We'll also record invasive species like Phragmites and pepperweed. And we're going to record, we didn't do this last year because we just didn't have the time, but we're going to start this year also recording environmental variables, including salinity, the water table, how high when if you dig down through the marsh, what depth do you actually reach the water because there's water under the marsh, pH, temperature, dissolved oxygen. These are all important environmental variables to track because they will tell us the health of the marsh. The marsh should have a certain salinity, should have a certain amount of dissolved oxygen. It should have certain species of vegetation and animals in the marsh. And if any of those variables change over time, that will indicate the changing health of the marsh. Could also indicate the causes of the changes in the marsh. As you see here, sampling generally will occur during the growing season, which is from July to early September. Actually, it starts in June. I'm sure you've noticed that the marsh has gotten nicely green already. So July to early September, somewhere in that time frame. Right now we're working in August, but we'll expand into a broader time frame as we add more sites because we'll just need more time to do the work. And what will we do with these data? Because we're not just, it's beautiful to walk on the marsh. It's beautiful to be out there, but we're doing this for a reason. And what we want to do is collect actionable data, data that is of a high quality that will be shared with the appropriate organizations who are responsible for managing and restoring the marshes, and also with the public to educate the public about what's happening to the marshes. The public has a right to know what's happening to their marshes, but also it helps garner support for the conservation and preservation of the marshes. So that's kind of very briefly what we'll be doing, and I can answer, of course, questions about more specifics if you after the presentation. So to give you an idea what it looks like, these are these are not the best resolution pictures. I grabbed them from the Town Green website because I didn't take any pictures because I was busy doing the monitoring. But well, what we generally do is we get to the marsh. We have an orientation. We do a little bit of training. It's pretty straightforward work. Doesn't take a lot of training. And the way we do the monitoring is we set down these long tapes. These are called transect tapes. And we are using a method that was developed by the Coastal Zone Management Division for specifically for doing this sort of monitoring with volunteers and with school children. So this is a sanctioned method that the state uses, has been approved by the state. It's a very good method, so we follow it. And it's always good to use methods that other organizations use so that you can share your data with the appropriate organizations. So we lay down this long transect along a tidal creek that you see here in the background, or if we're on the coast, right on by open water, along the open water. And then off of this, we have our sample transects. So you could see in the background this the transect, and then we have this long transect that comes off at right angles to that baseline transect or evaluation zone transect. And then we move along this tape, the transect, with quadrat, which is just a meter by meter square frame that is made from PVC. You could kind of see it on the ground here, and we just record the species that we see in it. And it's that straightforward. We also do things like calculate the percent cover. So does marsh hay grass cover it by 50% or 60% to get a kind of what we call percent area coverage. And we just do that as we move along that baseline transect that was put along the creek. And then we just record the data. We have data sheets that we record the data on, and that's pretty much it. It's pretty straightforward process. The process of recording pH and water table height and the other environmental parameters are added to this. I don't. Those are a little bit more complicated, but we will be recording those in the same area that we record the ecological parameters. So what's next? We're going to resample the sites from 2025. And we're going to add the abiotic. So when you talk about the environment, there's the biotic, the living part of the environment, the abiotic, the non-living, such as temperature, pH. We're going to add the abiotic sampling this year. We're going to establish an additional site at Wingershik, and I'll show you where that will be. And if we have enough volunteers and enough time, we'll set up another site outside of Wingershik. If not, we will add that next year. So where is the next sites at Wingershik going to be? So I want to just note this area here where you see the berm. So hopefully you can see this long, slender line that surrounds the marsh. And this is a berm that was built by the Army Corps of Engineers. It's about 2 meters or 6 feet high. And the reason they built this around this area here, which is now filled with terrestrial plants, was actually part of this marsh. So the marsh was cut down significantly by surrounding it with the berm. And what the Army Corps did was they dredged, this happened in 1965, they dredged the Annisquam to make it navigable, and they dumped the dredge fill into this area that they surrounded with this berm. It was legal back then. It's not legal now, but this used to be marsh. And there's actually a really good video about this that talks about the history of filling of Wingershik. And the discussion has been to restore this part of the marsh. And the way you would do that is remove all the fill, because there is marsh sediment still under the fill. There's no marsh plants, but you would remove this fill, help dig out and restore the tidal creeks, because salt water needs to come in and flood the creek during high tides. This is part of the hydrology. If you don't get flooding on the marsh dies. So remove the fill, restore the creeks, bring back the marsh. So what I want to do this year is to set up a site some place close to our current site, but along where the berm is. Because again, this will be important to understand how the site will change if they actually do this restoration. It actually may be worthwhile when we're here in the berm to actually go into the berm to sample what's there so we know how that part changes as well. The reason we chose the site where we sampled last year was for two reasons. One, it's easy to get to. We just walk through from this parking lot, the auxiliary parking lot, and we can get to the site. But also, there was a restoration plan that was developed, I believe, in the mid 80s that talked about restoring this part of the marsh by getting rid of the mosquito trenches and restoring water flow and sediment. Add sediment to the marsh because you can restore a marsh by building it up. So that's why this site was chosen for those two reasons. But now it's important to also sample along the berm. So that's pretty much that's a brief overview um, of the project, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, John, for that overview. I'm really excited about the new site this year.
Yeah.
Do we have any questions? You can come off video and ask a question.
I have a question. What's the elevation of the berm fill area in comparison to the actual, sea level of
Uh,
the?
yeah. I don't know the actual number, the actual height.
Mhm.
That's be something that would be good to measure. But the berm is 2 meters and the fill goes slopes up over above the
Up over
berm.
that.
So it's definitely more than 2 meters in
Yeah.
spots.
That's
And
a lot of fill to remove.
yeah, it is. This would be a massive restoration project.
And is the area where the berm is capable of supporting like vehicles that could help remove the
Hmm.
berm fill? So it's essentially almost a road.
Yeah, it's definitely doable. It's not going to be
Mhm.
easy, but it's doable. There's been projects of scales that are larger than this that have been done for restoration. But and there is money to do this. There's a fund that was put aside by National Grid because they inherited, I forget, was it Gloucester Gas and Light Company? Forget the name of the company, but they dumped coal tar in Boston Harbor, right where the harbor master's office is.
Gloucester Harbor.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gloucester
Did I say
Harbor. Yeah.
Boston Harbor?
Yeah.
I'm going to Boston in a couple hours. I guess I'm just thinking ahead. So Gloucester Harbor. Uh, and when they were restoring some of the dock by the Coast Guard station, they tapped into this unnatural underwater reserve of coal tar. And so as part of the remediation, the National Grid needed to put aside some money. And there's a little more than $5 million in that fund. And a couple of years ago, there was a call for ideas, not proposal, but ideas about how to spend that money. And the money has to go to restoring habitat. And that's when I said there's been a lot of discussion. It's been kind of coalescing. All the discussion's been coalescing around a big restoration project at Wingersheek. But this is not official. It's right now, it's just at the early discussion phase thing. It got delayed. The decision has been delayed a few years for various reasons. So if there's agreement to do the restoration of Wingersheek, that's what's going to happen. And that's another reason why we wanted to get to Wingacheek, because we knew that there was discussion about restoring the marsh. So we wanted to get there and start monitoring it.
Mhm.
Joanne, do you have a follow-up?
I don't at the moment. I'm thinking, I like that we're getting a jump on this.
Yeah, yeah,
So the information will be there when the time comes.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and hopefully that time will come to
Mm.
restore that area. Tara, you have a question.
Yeah, first and foremost, thank you so much, John. This was
Sure.
really informative. And I have two questions. First, something I think about a lot with like climate change and habitat loss is, we have so much like great data about the
Hmm.
impact. And something I hear a lot from the climate scientists is like that, like a frustration of like, we have great data on what to do, but it's not always followed by politicians or um, what have you. So I want
Yeah,
to ask in terms of everything that you've done, like how do you find like the best way to convey like the importance of these styles of like projects to people and um get people motivated, like not so much in a doom way, but also like what can we save while we have time way?
sure.
And my second question, I see that there's a penguin in your background.
Yeah.
Have you been to the Arctic yet? And have you met a penguin in person? Because I would like the details, please.
So I'll start to the second question first. So penguins are in the Antarctic. Um, so if you ever see pictures on Instagram of polar bear hunting a penguin, you know it's AI. Um, so yes, so I took this picture. I was in Antarctica in January, and I did a little project at a citizen science project on microplastics, and I was invited to put in a full proposal, which was accepted. So I'll be going to Antarctica the January of 2028, the Arctic June of 2028, and then for 3 weeks going starting at the South Sandwich Islands, which is sub-Antarctic. It's not truly Antarctic, and we're doing a transect from there to Brazil. And I'll be sampling microplastics. And this is through an organization called Blue Green Expeditions, and they run the citizen science cruises. So that's what I'll be doing. So yeah, and I saw lots of penguins. They are as cute as you would think, but man, do they smell. Uh, we were in breeding colonies, and it was just, it didn't smell good. But yeah, they're very cute. Um, if you're wondering, this is I think this was an Adelie penguin. I don't remember. I'd have to look closely. But no, sorry, it's a Gen 2 penguin. That's a Gen 2 penguin. So your second question, yeah, that's the big frustration, right? We know what we need to do. There's no doubt. There's no scientific question about what we need to do. The question is, site specific. What do we need to do to restore Wingacheek? Right? That will be different than what it is we need to restore, salt marshes in some other part of the world. Um, and today, I think, and this, I'm a natural scientist, I'm an ecologist, but I actually think the social sciences and the humanities are more important today for conservation than the natural scientists because of what you said. We need to affect policy, and we need to put what we know into practice. So that means reaching out to politicians, and it means reaching out to the public, and to educate and everyone and inspire everyone and convince everyone that we need to do these things. And you're right, we don't want to do it in an alarmist way. We want to go out and say, these are the problems. However, there's hope, and this is what we can do. And there's still hope out there. We are running out of time. When the alarm clock goes off, we have no idea because climate and the environment and ecological systems are chaotic systems. We can't predict. where they're going to go. We can just get an idea of the trajectory. But we need to act. And this is why I've been working with citizen scientists throughout my career. All my field work has been done with citizen scientists, and all my lab work has been done with students. It's because I think citizen science is one of the best, if not the best tool to use for conservation, because you get communities involved. They become empowered, they become engaged, they understand the issues, and then hopefully they feel inspired enough to talk to others and talk to the politicians. And Massachusetts, we're under home rule. So the communities make the decisions for the most part. So if we can sway communities in Massachusetts, then we can affect change. I have to say, it is frustrating working in Massachusetts under home rule in some instances, because you do have that extra layer of red tape you need to get through, right? In other states that don't have home rule, you can just talk to the state. And if the state agrees, then the change will be implemented. But here, obviously, we have to start with the communities. But that's a good thing. I hear a lot of my colleagues complain about home rule, but I think it's actually a good thing, because once you get the communities behind you, things happen. So, did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay,
And thank you.
sure.
I have a question, if you can hear me.
Sure.
Yeah, go
Yes,
ahead, Bruce.
Oh, okay. Hi, John. Bruce Bemis. I helped out last year,
Yep,
and
I remember.
yeah, just wanted to get a sense how many how many people you might need this year. Taking that you want to increase the area of sampling, so just maybe if you had an idea of what's the optimum group size, we can start getting some people together. So.
Sure. I always answer with that question with, I'll take as many people that want to volunteer. I've worked with large groups. We can manage it. What is more important is the minimum size of the group that we need to do the work. And just to go back and resample what we set up last year, we could probably get by with, around 6 people or so. But if in order to add another site, I mean, you remember how long, right? How long it took us just to set up those 2 sites. So, so I would say let's start with the minimum of at least 6 people, 4 to 6 people. And then as we see the size of the group we get, then we could figure out what we can accomplish with that group size. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yep, that sounds good.
Yeah, more the merrier.
Okay, that
Okay.
sounds good.
Yeah, don't turn anyone away.
No way. Yeah, any
Well,
final
hopefully we'll
questions for
spread them
John?
over
Mhm.
time, whatever. We'll get as many people as possible for each day that you have
Yeah.
planned.
Yeah, and then we'll
I guess we'll come up with the dates as
yeah, then
when
it
they
just
a
becomes,
little later, but yeah.
yeah, and then it just becomes a scheduling issue. And so that's a nice,
Yeah.
it's easily managed.
Maureen, will you be sending out information on this so that I can forward it along to people?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we last year we did it the week of August, like I think it was 14 and 15, or maybe 15 and 16. This year, that's the same, that weekend is Friday the 14th, Saturday is the 15th, and 16th is the Sunday. So depending on the tide, like last
Mhm.
year, we were looking at that. But we'll have a sign up sheet of registration for the event.
Mhm.
But it just depends on when John says, yeah, okay, we're ready to go.
Hmm.
And it was 2 full days last year. I think we were there for 6 hours
Yeah.
each day,
Yeah.
back to back. It was a Saturday and Sunday. So my hope is that we'd be able to do something like that on a weekend,
Hmm.
or maybe even like a Friday, Saturday.
Yeah. And assuming our markers, the poles that we set up are still there, or at least most of them, um, that resampling those sites, at least the vegetation sampling, won't take much time. Of course, it took 2 days because we were setting up the sites. So,
Yeah.
so if those markers are still there, I certainly will go to the marsh well beforehand to check things out and replace anything that's missing. So the sampling once with the since we have this set up and the sampling will be pretty straightforward, we should definitely have enough time to set up the abiotic sampling at that site and then set up the second site at Wingershik.
That's exciting. I'm looking forward to it again this year. It was
Mhm.
fun. It was a little
Yeah,
hot
it
that weekend.
was very warm those 2 days.
Yeah,
Yes.
but it's memorable. It's
Yes.
memorable to take part in an activity like this. It was bonding between the folks who were there.
Hmm.
We knew we were doing something important at the time and making a difference in the marsh.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's a definitely a physical action that we could take,
Yeah.
and you just have to
And
remember
the
to bring lunch and good
amazing thing of
snacks.
being out on the marsh itself is just a wonderful
Oh,
experience,
yeah.
and all that green, and it's just it's really great. So yeah,
Yeah. It's
don't have that
Zen.
opportunity
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. No, it's I grew up around salt marshes, so salt marshes are a very special place for me. That's where the salt marshes and the surrounding bays is why I fell in love with the ocean. That and Jacques Cousteau, uh, but yeah, that's where I fell in love with the ocean and knew I wanted to be a marine biologist. So yeah, so salt marshes are one of my happy places.
Mm. Last year we saw beautiful birds, but we also saw a deer on the marsh,
Hmm. Hmm.
and it was so quiet, even with
Yeah,
the boat traffic
yeah,
that might be down on Annisquam. It was just, yeah,
yeah,
beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah, everybody enjoyed it.
Hmm.
So we'll get that information out, Joanne, and we'll have a sign up sheet. Um, we will also last year we had an article in the paper about it, and so we'll return to that because it's our second year.
Hmm.
We got some folks from that as well. So
And it would be about a 6 hour commitment each day. Is that what you're?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
It may be a little less depending on what we accomplish, but it's safe to assume 6 hours.
Mhm.
And we have, so of course, break for lunch, but not long. Because yeah, so yeah, just assume 6 hours and we'll go from there. And assume it's going to be hot. Assume you're going to need water and food, snacks, maybe some bug repellent, though. Gotta be careful what you use. And well, we can talk about this later, but maybe I'll just mention it now. We can talk about specifics later, but since we will be in the marsh and we will be touching vegetation, you have to take a look at all the plants and stuff. If you wear bug repellent, you don't want to, and sunscreen, you don't want to put it on your hands and forearms because you don't want to introduce it into the environment. So a good thing to do is wear long sleeve performance um, fabric shirts, nylon shirts, or even just cotton t-shirts, long sleeve. Use that to protect yourself, but we don't want to introduce anything into the marsh. And even so-called reef safe
Mhm.
sunscreen often are not really safe. So there are some out there that are good, but you have to be careful about what you use.
Great, good info, and we'll be looking forward to this event.
Okay?
So thank you, John, and thank you for joining us. We will have more information out in our newsletter. I'm going to post this on YouTube and probably add this to the newsletter so that people can learn more about what this project's all about.
Sounds good. And I
Great.
will figure out the dates shortly.
It's fantastic. Thanks for joining us, Joanne and Bruce and Tara. Yeah, we'll see you soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye, thank you.